Rain had been falling for 3 straight days, soaking everything in its path, turning the streets into streams and the gutters into rivers. Underneath one rusted sedan in a forgotten alley, a small shape trembled. At first, it could have been mistaken for nothing more than a shadow, something tossed there by the storm. But when the headlights of a passing car flickered across the ground, the shadow moved. 2 eyes reflected faintly, wide, hollow, searching. The German shepherd puppy was no older than a few weeks, his paws too big for his frame, his ribs pressing through fur that clung damp against fragile skin. He had wedged himself so tightly under the chassis that even the pouring rain could not fully wash over him. But it did not stop the cold from sinking into his bones. He shivered violently, every breath catching like broken glass, every sound from the street sending a ripple of fear through his body. People passed, umbrellas overhead, heads tucked low, too hurried to notice the ghost of a life huddled beneath the car. To them it was just another wet alley, another wreck of metal rusting into the ground. But to him it was the only shelter left. Hunger gnawed so deep it twisted his belly. His whimpers were too faint to pierce the storm, and still he waited. For what? Even he didn't know. When the hand came, it was sudden, a pale hand, reaching down through the rain, steady and deliberate. For the first time in days, warmth cut through the cold. The puppy flinched, pressing further back against metal, eyes flashing with fear. Yet the hand didn't retreat. It stayed there, open and patient, rain pooling in its palm as if it had all the time in the world. Somewhere between desperation and instinct, the puppy's nose twitched. He inched forward, trembling, and for the first time his fragile body brushed against hope. The storm outside still raged, but under that car, the first spark of rescue had begun, the kind that could either save him or come too late.
The city never noticed him. Days blurred into nights as the puppy remained curled beneath the car, too weak to move, too afraid to emerge. His breaths came in shallow bursts, his ribs rising with effort, and every sound, a horn, a slammed door, a rolling bottle, made his small body jerk in panic. Hunger hollowed him from within. He gnawed at a soggy leaf, a piece of cardboard, anything that could dull the ache. Nothing did. The rain soaked his fur so completely that it smelled of rust and oil. He pressed his belly to the pavement, trying to cling to what little warmth lingered from the car's engine. But when the car left, so did the heat. Only the cold remained. Some people glanced, a few even paused, but none stooped low enough to see the frightened eyes beneath the wheels. To them, he was invisible, forgotten. The longer he stayed there, the weaker he became. His legs trembled when he tried to stand, collapsing beneath his own weight. He cried once, a soft, pitiful sound, but the rain swallowed it whole. And then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, stopping at the edge of the car. A crouch, a pause, and a whisper that cut through the storm like a thread of light.
At first, the hand was nothing but another threat. The puppy shrank back, pressing his face against the metal, claws scraping weakly at the ground. But the hand didn't strike, didn't grab. It hovered, steady and warm, despite the rain dripping from its wrist. The stranger crouched low, speaking words too soft to carry meaning, but their tone carried something else entirely. patience. The world seemed to hold its breath. The rain slowed to a muffled hiss on the pavement. The puppy's nose twitched. Hunger gnawed at him, but fear held tighter. For long minutes he did not move, and yet curiosity was stronger than despair. When his nose brushed the stranger's fingers, the world shifted. A fragile line was crossed. The hand remained still, letting him retreat again, but the scent lingered. For the first time in days, he smelled safety. But when the stranger finally reached further, trying to lift him, panic erupted. The puppy writhed, yelping, twisting with the last of his strength. His heart hammered like a bird trapped in a cage. Would trust cost him the little strength he had left, or was it the only way to survive?
By the time they reached the clinic, the puppy's body was limp. His breaths came shallow, ribs rattling with every exhale. The vet's face darkened as the examination began. Dehydration, malnutrition, possible infection. He's shutting down, the vet warned gravely. If we don't intervene now, he won't last the night. Needles, IV fluids, careful hands worked quickly. The stranger never left, kneeling beside the table, whispering promises the puppy couldn't understand, but somehow felt. Every twitch, every faint stir of his paw was watched with desperate hope. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the steady drip of fluids and the soft hum of machines. Once, his breathing faltered. The room froze. The stranger's hand closed over his paw, whispering again, voice trembling. Somehow the rise and fall of his chest returned. But how many more times could he fight the edge of surrender?
Recovery was not a miracle. It was a war. Every day brought setbacks. Food refused, weakness pulling him back, nightmares that made him cry out in his sleep. But each day also brought victories. A cautious lick of water, a wobbly step toward the stranger, a moment of leaning his weight against a steadied hand. The staff marveled. The dog who had once curled under a car now ventured into the sunlight, paused tentative on the pavement. His body still frail, but his eyes began to hold sparks of something new. Not quite trust, not yet, but possibility. The stranger came every day, sitting in silence when words weren't enough. The bond grew in invisible threads, stitched together by patience and persistence. One evening, as the sun sank low, the puppy's tail lifted ever so slightly, swaying once. The stranger laughed through tears. It was the smallest of gestures and the loudest of victories. But with every step forward came the fear of collapse. What if his fragile body gave out again? What if hope came too late?
Weeks later, the day finally came. The shelter door opened, but this time, he did not run back to the shadows. He stood beside the stranger, leash loose, body steady. His ears pricked at the sound of cars, tail lifted, eyes meeting the stranger's gaze. He did not search the road anymore for someone who wasn't coming. Instead, he looked forward. The volunteers watched in silence as the pair stepped into the golden light of evening. His steps were unsteady, but they were forward. For the first time, the waiting was over. It wasn't just survival, it was belonging. A life that had once been nothing but shivers under rusted metal now carried the weight of second chances. And as the sun bled across the parking lot, the German Shepherd puppy walked into his future, no longer alone.